What if I told you that you could 10x your Fortnite competitive skill in weeks or months instead of years? My name is T Church, a professional coach and content creator. And today I'm going to be exposing secrets I learned, strategies I use to help players improve at a faster rate than they would have otherwise. So, as we jump into this video today, guys, the first thing that I really wanted to talk about with you guys is the secret that I think a lot of newer people need to understand, especially with a lot of you guys being a little bit younger. Knowledge compounds. So what does it mean? What do I mean by that? Well, you need to think of it like a snowball starting at the top of a mountain. So as a snowball spends more time rolling, it accumulates more and more snow. Improvement in Fortnite works the same way. The more you play, the more knowledge you accumulate, and the better you become. So the next time you watch your favorite pro do something crazy, ask yourself, how much knowledge was required to make that individual play happen? How much time was spent accumulating and developing their skill sets to allow them to get to that level? Most current pros have been competing and qualifying for finals lobbies since late Chapter 2 or early Chapter 3. That's about 3 to 5 years on average for a lot of these guys. So how much knowledge would you have accumulated in the same amount of time? The answers to these questions will serve as your foundation moving forward. The reason why this is so important is because everything starts in your mind. If you think that you can accomplish in 6 months what it took others years to do, you're likely delusional. So what we'll go ahead and do is create a baseline of expectations for ourselves to prevent things like burnout and frustration when the progress is coming maybe slower than expected. So the foundation actually has nothing to do with the game and everything to do with making sure your mind, expectations, and goals align and are realistic. Then and only then can you start to build upon that foundation and create these pillars that we're going to talk about today. So what are the pillars? Well, in my time as coach, I was constantly searching for a better way to help communicate concepts to players, and I eventually came up with these pillars. Each pillar serves as an individual skill in game. So the pillars are as follows in no relevant order. Off spawn, fighting IQ and micro decision making, macro knowledge and game IQ, mechanics, team skills and communication, and leadership. So now you understand what these pillars are. What I'm going to go ahead and do for the rest of the video is divide the rest of the video into sections based on each one of these pillars, and we'll discuss how you can individually improve on each of these skills. For example, this season, there are duffel bags that spawn at different POIs in random locations around the map that have a 10% spawn rate for baseball bats. So in comparison, regular chests drop the bat at about a 2% rate and rare chests spawn bats at about a 5% rate. So as you can probably guess, that means that the value of the go bags for obtaining mobility is twice that of the next best thing. That is to say, you will have more games with bats and thus more consistent tournaments. The caveat here is obviously that the better the loot at a given spot, the more people that are going to want to contest you, which leads me to our improvement off spawn. So the first step to becoming an elite off spawn player, just like anything else, is to know yourself. So are you a god dropper, maybe not the best fighter? Well, a spot like the dock above Kappa Factory may be right for you. Are you a good box fighter? You could consider landing somewhere with a lot of small buildings or houses like Crime City and claiming a portion of the POI for yourself. If you're good at ratting, you could take your chances at a POI like Seaport, where there's a lot of space and loot for you to be able to claim safely and leave the POI without ever having to fully engage in a fight. So as you can see, without knowing what your preferred playstyle is, you can't accurately assess whether or not a particular draw spot is right for you, so it's always going to be the first step. Now, after you guys have gone ahead and selected your drop, you obviously want to practice. If you or your friends have creator codes, you can load up private matches to practice your drops, off-spawn fighting strategies, and to see how different factors in the game will affect your drop. Things like bus routes, things like other people contesting other drops, maybe different gun spawns at different drops, hills around your drop that people could look at you from. These are all things that you want to take in consideration and be prepared for. Now, if you don't have a creator code, you or your friends, you can also, load up public matches or rank to learn chests and floor spawns, material types for different breakables throughout your spawn, and then start to devise your strategies from there. So while you're doing this, you also want to be paying attention to different drops, focusing on improving your skills for landing exactly where you want to, and being able to control the appropriate amount of loot for you and or your team. Once you've begun this process, you're on your way to becoming an elite off-spawn player, and the only thing separating you from the top is time, patience, and effort. So for our second pillar, guys, what we're going to be focusing on is going to be the side of fighting that most people often overlook: decision making. So decisions made during fights are referred to as micro decisions, as the structure for taking and winning fights is something that is separate from decisions that affect game flow, otherwise known as macro decisions. These include decisions like edit selection, play calling, and target focus. So, T-Church, isn't edit selection a mechanical issue? Well, technically speaking, edit selection would actually be a micro decision that can be improved upon in a way that doesn't necessarily include brainless repetitions in the latest Raiders mechanics training map. So a quick example for you guys is if you were to go for a pre-edit play, and I may attach a clip here in the video of pretty much exactly this, the where you decide to make your 6 tile edit or whatever edit you make for your pre-edit is going to be important. So for example, if you're to be pushing up towards a wall, so say there's a tarp next to you and they're a layer up diagonally, so you double ramp up to their wall, you wouldn't want to do a bottom 6 tile edit, because what would end up happening is that your line of sight would actually be blocked from the wall and from the cone. So instead, what you want to do is you want to do either a 6 tile to the left or to the right side of the wall. That way, when you guys take it, you have full line of sight on anyone in the box, especially if they're on towards that front side. So that's one example of how your edit selection would be a micro decision as opposed to, something that you would do mechanically, right? So when it comes to IQ in general, regardless of the category, the best way to improve here is to exchange ideas with other players and try to leave your ego aside and accept the information that makes sense according to your unique skill set, team situation, etc. Group VOD reviews help immensely as well. Multiple people can observe the same situation and come to different conclusions, and the perspective of others can build on top of yours to help you have a more complete picture of reality. This is the beauty of being the social creatures that we are. We're always stronger together. So if you're struggling to find people who are like-minded, improvement-focused, driven, and borderline obsessive, you should focus on a couple of different things. First, you should build your awareness surrounding your skills in game. Figure out what kind of player you want to become, and then focus on creating strengths in your gameplay that reflect that. To do this, it is imperative that you look over every single death until you're confident that you have a well-rounded understanding of the game. You should be able to answer questions like, what mistakes did I make that contributed to my death, and what can I do differently to change the outcome next time? As I said at the start of the video, knowledge compounds. Knowing this, the stress of having a fully developed understanding of the game right now should be at least partially alleviated. As long as you do the work, you will get better. That's all there is to it. Now, the exciting part is that all you have to do is trust in that and trust in the process and continue to work. Now, for our third pillar, we'll be talking about macro knowledge and game IQ. So when it comes to increasing knowledge, the best things that you can do are watch, listen, ask questions, kind of like what we were talking about with the last pillar, improving micro knowledge and game IQ, and micro and macro knowledge and game IQ are going to be extremely similar. So much like our micro decision making, our macro knowledge is going to be increased through social interactions, watching the game. Obviously, you should be playing the game and watching back your games, as we previously discussed. When it comes to increasing macro knowledge and making better decisions, we need to understand that what exactly we need to look for to increase the value we're receiving from the work we're putting in. To do this, I'll go ahead and provide you with an example of how to work through the problem-solving process on a macro level. So in our example, we'll be focusing on an individual trio. We'll just call this team our trio from now on. Our trio plays through a tournament where they have 5 off-spawn deaths and 5 in-games. In those in-games, they had consistent top 3s. They did decent, but they didn't perform at the level they expected and are unhappy with the results, so obviously they decide to hit the vase to see what they can do to not repeat the same performance. The first thing they do is take a look over their match history, and they identify that they're dying off-spawn too much. After some discussion, the trio decides that the off-spawn issues were because they were landing a highly contested drop, and they decide the best course of action is for them to land at a different drop where they can be less contested. But how do we get from understanding that we're getting too contested to decide to change our drop? So how do we get from step 1 to step 2? Well, we watched, we listened, we asked questions. We had a discussion as a team, right? So there is no focus on the micro here, right? We're not talking about, oh, you do this fight, you do that fight. We need to do this differently. We need to grab this loot here and then take this engagement from here. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about bigger decisions that impact the entirety of game flow, right? So a lot of this is going to come down to just developing your strategy, positioning, all of that kind of stuff. right? So you need to understand how to do that. And the best way to really improve on that, number one, stick with a team, right? Have like develop a consistent structure. One of the easiest ways to do that is by sticking with a team over the course of a season, multiple seasons. Number two, is obviously going to be VOD review, right? VOD review, watch Twitch streams. Like Twitch streams are one of my most powerful tools for learning because I really like to listen to the communication between players and to help understand like what they're thinking, and what they're feeling. They will discuss how their individual skill sets compare to other players, and you'll see them be able to take advantage of that. So there's different things that you can learn just from listening to different players who maybe are better than you play the game and go through their thought process, right? So those are the things I would kind of recommend for improving on a macro level. And at the end of the day, I think the macro, when you get it right, is one of like the most important things to get right, because this is going to determine how the majority of your tournaments go. I mean, this is 70 to 80% of it, just like with the off spawn, because that's where everything starts. We get too caught up in our egos and emotions, with the little things, who's got the most kills, who's got the most damage, to understand that all it takes sometimes is a small little tweak for a team to go from very, very mid, in strategies, small tweak in strategy, from a team to go from very, very mid to very, very good, right? So that's where you guys should start on the macro. And again, it's just a process. That process is going to continue over the long term, and you're going to continue to develop as a player over the long term. So don't stress about knowing everything right away, but do try to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because this is a competitive environment and you got to keep working. Now, for our fourth pillar, guys, we're going to be talking a little bit about, one of my favorite subjects, to be honest with you. I love the mechanical side of this game. I think we all do. It's Fortnite, right? Like building and editing is the thing that separates it from other shooters and has kind of kept us here. So as you guys are learning and growing, you're going to see players that can do a lot of things that maybe you can't currently, or maybe you can, and you want to try to implement those moves into your game. But for you guys that can't, just because you can't right now doesn't mean you never will. You just need a better way to practice. Or maybe you need better ping. Some of you guys, that's definitely applicable. So I hold the belief, though, that mechanical skill is extremely important for being able to survive. Offense is still the best defense against aggressive players. So you'll definitely want to be able to emulate a lot of the things you're going to see from other people. There are a few things you need to be able to do efficiently and effectively. They are move in and out of boxes without losing momentum, create space in a timely and efficient manner, piece control quickly, and maintain character model positioning. If you really want to get better mechanically, practicing these concepts in a manner where difficulty and pressure escalate, in creative with no opponent, into a training map against bots, into creative against a real opponent, into battle royale tournaments. So if you guys use that practice structure and you give yourself a week, 2 weeks, and you continue to try to master it at the different levels of execution, right? So that's the list that I just gave you: the creative no opponent, creative real opponent, BR tourneys. If you can do that, you will improve, right? And you'll improve faster than your friends, because I guarantee you your friends are not going out logically trying to do that. Promise you. Mechanics are the most repetition dependent skill, guys, meaning you're going to have to put in the most time and effort to increase them as a skill, and they require the most effort to maintain. This also means that for every hour you put into mechanics, you get less value than you would investing that time elsewhere, which is why I'm recommending limiting mechanical training and aim training to a maximum of 1 hour per day per training type. Okay? Because you're going to get a lot more value, like I said, training the macro decisions, getting better at your game, like increasing your game knowledge, making better decisions, right? Versus how many times are you really going to be triple editing in game? These are the things you have to think about. This is the context you have to set up when you're thinking about playing the game and setting up your practice, guys. So for our next pillar, guys, we're going to be talking about something that I think is probably the most important skill that you can have and develop, right? We're going to be talking about team skills and communication. So I've seen countless players that are good individually, but can never quite figure out how to balance the team so everyone's strengths are able to shine through. I've also seen the flip side. Players that aren't as good individually, that are enhanced in team modes due to the fact that they spent months or years playing with the same person or people. Camby and Seti being the prime example of this, right? The strongest teams will always be teams where the individuals in the group trust each other and are strong enough individually to watch each other's back, and they commit to being there for each other no matter what. These are the same principles that elite military units and professional sports teams are built off of. So if these kinds of people are abiding by these principles, why wouldn't you? In addition, good teammates can communicate effectively with each other, often looking out for each other and covering each other's weaknesses. The advantage that humans have is our ability to communicate verbally with one another and speak intention. That is the core of good communication in a team setting. Open, honest, and speaking about what we want to happen so we can align ourselves properly to make it happen. Another big part of team skills and communication as well, guys, is just empathy, man. Especially if you guys are in positions of leadership, you're IGLing, or maybe you're one of the better players in your friend group and a lot of people look up to you, they'll come to you for advice. I would say that, putting your leadership skills on display and making people feel better and encouraged will motivate them to continue to play the game, right? So that's where like team, communication is one of the most important skills that you guys can have. It's, one of the things, again, you get to just speak your intention, which allows people to understand actually who you are as a person. And without that, it's very hard to, maintain, regulate relationships, emotions, and all of the different things that are going to come up for you guys while you're going through this journey. Because I can almost guarantee you guys are not going to play with the same teammates, every single season until you qualify to a grand finals. And if you do, like, people will probably be making content pieces about you guys because it's something else, right? But that's, as far as team skills, communication go, I mean, that's the foundation for all of our relationships. And it's also the foundation of great leaders, which does take us into our sixth pillar. So our sixth pillar, guys, is going to be leadership, right? Something that a lot of people don't think about. But the reality is that if you have a great leader, and leaders come in different shapes and sizes, right? I can think of two off the top of my head right now. You have Peterbot, and then you have Acorn. First and second, North America. Obviously, you guys know a lot of the drama that's been going on with those different trios recently and over the past couple of seasons. But I think it's a stark difference. You get to see the different leadership styles. Peterbot's definitely very much a get behind me, follow me, and just like support me, and we're gonna win type of leader. Whereas Acorn is pretty much the polar opposite. He does his best to, his focus is more team oriented. He focuses on putting his team in the best positions to win consistently, or for his teammates to be able to excel, right? So two totally different styles of leadership, but both equally as effective, right? But the thing is that if you talk to anybody in the community, most pros, they're going to say that, Peter's probably the harder player to play with from a personality perspective. And this is where I think that leadership is so important, because you can be the type of leader that goes out there, that does it themselves, that leads from the front, and you can motivate your team to do the same thing, because if you have competitive teammates, they're not going to want to fall behind you. So that is an effective form of leadership. But a lot of, it also means that you're probably going to struggle to find those people. You're going to have a very, very, very small pool of people to select from, right? Versus somebody who can kind of analyze the situation, understands himself really well, and understands the decisions that need to be made, in order for the team to succeed, right? And then the focus is less on that individual person, more on the success of the team and the teammates. So you get to, it's, again, there's another form of motivation and encouragement there, right? But the reality here is this, guys. In the animal kingdom, monkeys have hierarchies similar to those that you'd see in human society. So there's a leader or alpha who's in charge of leading the pack. This alpha is typically the largest and strongest of all the monkeys in that group, but even with this status, he can still be ripped apart, quite literally, by two subordinates 2/3 his size if they're dissatisfied with his leadership. In fact, scientists have found that this will always happen if an alpha is particularly cruel or otherwise betrays his group. So why am I talking about monkeys? Well, there's some similarities in how human leaders must interact with those that they lead, and how the hierarchies are structured in the animal kingdom. To begin with, think of the best IGL you've ever played with, or think about the best coach you've ever had, or Maybe think about the best pro IGL that you know, that maybe you've watched a lot of their Twitch streams and you feel like you kind of know them as a player. Now, think about how that person treated you or treated others. Whether nice or strict, they almost all will have something in common. They make you feel like you're being heard, like you matter, and like you're a capable member of their team. These are the qualities that create great leaders, not flexing individual strength. After all, we're always stronger together.